When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and before we get into the meat of this episode, I want to ask you something. Have you ever looked at your life and you thought, I know this life I'm building or the way I'm building it just doesn't seem like it's working anymore. Like, you know that you don't want to keep doing it this way, and you know something needs to change, but you're not moving to make change, and you're maybe wondering, why haven't I done anything about it? Because I don't know that we talk enough about this, about the part after we realize that the life we're building may not fit where we thought we would be by now, or where we thought we wanted to be, or even the life that we thought we wanted to build, and it just doesn't feel the way we thought it would. The part where you think, okay, well, if this isn't it, what is? Like, what do I need to do to change my life? And then the part where you expect yourself to move, where you think, well, now that I see it, surely I'll do something about it. So surely I'll do something different. But then you don't. You just go back to work, you go back to your life, you move through your day as usual, you answer your emails, take care of the people who depend on you, you handle your responsibilities, and you just keep showing up. And every now and then, the thought comes back, right? The same one you've had before, the one that says, I really just don't think I can keep doing this forever. I don't think this fits me anymore. And the one that I asked myself back in 2017, is this all there is for me? Is this the life I'm only allowed to have? I mean, when you build a career and you're good at what you do, does questioning it mean that there's something wrong with you? And I think that's the moment where, as a high-achieving woman, that we turn on ourselves, because it's one thing not to know that the way you're living no longer fits you, or not to realize that you've outgrown the version of success you once worked so hard to build, or not to even realize that something about the way you've been carrying your life no longer feels sustainable. But when you feel like you do know and your life hasn't changed yet, it's so easy to start making that mean something about yourself. Like, maybe I'm just not disciplined enough, or I don't want it badly enough, or maybe I'm afraid. Maybe I'm the problem. And honestly, I don't think that that line of thinking serves us, because I think when intelligent, self-aware, deeply capable women find themselves standing in this exact space, the space between knowing and moving, the space where nothing has fully shifted yet, the space where you start to wonder, if I can see this so clearly, why am I still here? I think that this may be one of the most misunderstood experiences that us as high-achieving women can have. Because instead of recognizing it as part of being human, we often interpret it as evidence that something about us is broken, flawed, incapable, or wrong. And I don't think that's true at all. And so that's what I want to explore today. Not how to force yourself into action or how to have everything figured out, but what I want to talk about today is what happens when we stop judging ourselves long enough to become curious about the gap between what we know and what we do. So think about it this way. Maybe you're listening right now and you're thinking, well, I know how I feel. I know that I don't want to keep doing things the way I've been doing things. I know I don't want to wake up 6 months from now feeling exactly like this. And yet I haven't done anything differently. And the thing is, this isn't the first time you've had this realization, most likely. Maybe not even the second. Maybe you've had multiple moments where you've sat at your desk at the end of your day and you've thought, I just can't keep doing this. Moments where you've looked at your calendar and you wondered why every week seems to unfold exactly the same way, where you've crawled into bed exhausted and promised yourself something has to give. I just don't want to keep living like this. And you mean it. And that's the part I think people misunderstand, that when you say, I don't want to keep living like this, something has to change. I believe that you mean it, that you genuinely believe when you say, I don't think this is working for me anymore. But then Monday rolls around, there's a meeting you can't miss, a client who needs something, a family responsibility that takes priority, an unexpected problem you didn't see coming, all compounding on the 1,000 tiny decisions that make up a life. And before you even realize it's happened, you're right back inside the routine you were questioning just days before. Until the next moment arrives, right? Because maybe you're driving home from a meeting. Maybe you're in the shower. Maybe you're lying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning and the thought returns again. How am I still here? I thought I'd already decided on this. I thought I'd already figured it out. Why do I keep ending up back in the same place? And I think this is where the confusion starts, because if not knowing was the issue, this would make sense, right? But that's not what you're experiencing. You've already had the realization. You've already admitted, at least yourself, that something isn't right. So why does knowing seem to have so little impact on what happens next? And the thing is, when we get to this place, if we're not careful, the thoughts begin turning inward to maybe I can't trust myself. Maybe I don't really want this. Maybe I'm all talk. Maybe if I were stronger, more disciplined, more decisive, I would have done something by now. And you start using your lack of movement as evidence against yourself, not because you're incapable, but because you genuinely don't understand the gap between what you know and what you continue to do. And I think that's what makes this experience so painful at times, because it's not simply that you're still there. It's that you don't understand why you're still there. Because somewhere along the way, you've learned that awareness should automatically lead to action, that once you know better, you'll do better. And when that doesn't happen, you don't become curious, you become critical. And maybe that's the part of the conversation that we don't talk about enough. Not the moments where we first realize something needs our attention, but the moments where we start believing that because we haven't moved yet, that something about us must be wrong. So today I want to stay with this part of the conversation, the part where you've already seen enough to know something's not working the way you want it to, but you still haven't moved. So first I want to talk about why awareness doesn't automatically create movement, because I think we assume that once we see something clearly, or at least we believe that we know we know it, and we think that we have enough information, that the next step should feel obvious. But it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you can know something in your mind, like you can feel it in your body, you can see it playing out in your life, and you can still not know how to move from where you are. Then I want to talk about what happens when that lack of movement starts becoming personal, where you stop looking at the situation and you start questioning yourself. Why am I still here? Why haven't I done anything? Why do I keep saying I want something different, but then I keep living the same way? Because I think a lot of capable women don't just stay in the gap between knowing and doing. They judge themselves for being there. And that judgment can become heavier than the decision itself. And then finally, I want to talk about the question underneath all of this. Not what should I do? Not how do I force myself to move, but what's happening inside the space between what you know and what you haven't been able to act on yet. And so that's where we're going today. Now, I think one of the assumptions many intelligent, capable women carry is, if I really knew, I would have done something about it by now. Like if I really knew what to do, I would have done something. Like if I really wanted a different life, I would have made changes. If I was certain, I would have had the conversation. If I was serious, I would have stopped tolerating what wasn't working. And if I was ready, I would have moved already. And because of that, the longer we remain where we are, the more we start to question ourselves, thinking maybe I don't actually know what I want. Maybe I don't trust myself. Maybe I'm not committed enough. Maybe I don't really mean it. Maybe if this mattered as much as I say it does, I would have done something by now. And I think that's where this gets really complicated. Because if you find yourself here, you're not questioning the situation anymore, right? You're questioning yourself, your capability, your ability to make decisions and to take action. And it's not because you haven't had moments of clarity or that you haven't imagined something different or that you haven't had the thoughts of, I can't keep doing this. Something has to change. This isn't how I want to keep living. But because you've most likely learned along the way to believe that awareness should immediately produce action steps, that insight should automatically create movement, and that once you know better, you'll do better. Except I don't know that human beings are actually wired that way because awareness doesn't always automatically create readiness. And understanding what we know is very different from knowing what to do with it. Because I think that you can know that something no longer fits and still not understand why letting go feels so difficult. I think you can know that you want something different and still not understand what's keeping you in familiar routines. And you can also know that the version of your life that you've built no longer feels the way that you thought it would and still not know how to move towards something else. And I think that's why so many capable women end up using their lack of movement as evidence against themselves because they automatically assume if I really knew, I would have moved by now. But what if staying where you are isn't proof that you don't know? What if it's simply proof that knowing and moving don't always happen at the same speed? And I think this is why it becomes so painful in this realization, right? Because I don't actually think that the greatest cost to ourselves is that nothing has changed yet. I think it's what we start making our inaction mean about ourselves. Because after a while, it stops being, I haven't made a decision yet, and starts becoming, what does it say about me that I haven't? And I think that's a very different conversation, right? Because as a high achieving woman, you might feel like you're incredibly good at evaluating yourself, assessing yourself, identifying where you need to improve, taking responsibility, and holding yourself accountable. And that all sounds admirable until that same ability gets turned inward in ways that become incredibly unforgiving. Because then the questions start to sound like, why can't I do this? Why do I keep ending up back here? Why can everyone else seem to make difficult decisions while I remain in the same place? Why am I still struggling with something I already understand? Shouldn't I have figured this out by now? And before long, what started as confusion becomes self-doubt because you stop questioning the process and you start questioning your abilities and start thinking, maybe I'm not as decisive as I thought. Maybe I can't trust myself to know what to do. Maybe I say I want things to change, but I don't really mean it. Maybe I'm just someone who talks about what they want, but never follows through. And maybe this is simply who I am. This is how I'm wired. And I think that's the part that hurts the most because it's no longer about the original situation. It's no longer about whether the job fits, whether the relationship fits, whether the pace of your life fits, whether the version of success that you've built still feels the way that you thought it would. Because now it's about your identity. You're using your lack of movement as evidence against your own character. And the irony of this is that the very women who do this are often the women that other people describe as capable, dependable, thoughtful, responsible role models. Women who've built entire lives around being someone others can count on, which means they often hold themselves to impossible standards. Like, if I know, I should act. If I understand, I should move. And if I haven't moved, then maybe I don't know myself nearly as well as I thought I did. And I think that's where trust begins to erode, not because you've lost the ability to make decisions or that you're incapable of them, but because every time you interpret your lack of movement as a character flaw, you're teaching yourself to become a little less compassionate towards yourself, a little less curious about the why behind the what that you want and the why you're not moving, a little more convinced that the problem is you. And I don't think many women realize just how exhausting that can become because eventually you're carrying two things, the original situation and the weight of what you've made it mean about you. Because now you're carrying uncertainty, judgment, unanswered questions, the belief that you should have figured this out by now, carrying the desire for something different while also carrying the disappointment that you feel towards yourself because you haven't done anything about it yet. And holding both of those things at the same time can feel incredibly heavy because the longer we interpret our humanity as failure, the harder it becomes to see ourselves clearly and to extend ourselves grace and allow for the mistakes and missteps and the seasons of not yet understanding. And maybe to me, I believe this, that maybe that's the real cost. That not that you haven't moved yet, but that you've started building a story around who you are because you haven't. And maybe this is the time for something to shift. Maybe this is the time for something to shift for you because after all of the self-questioning, the evaluating, the mental spreadsheets that we create in our heads trying to understand why we're still in this place, meaning still in hold mode, that there comes a moment where another conversation needs to open up, where you can get real and honest with yourself and really lean into the questions that you ask yourself because maybe the questions you've been circling aren't the right questions for you. Because a lot of the time we're problem focused, right? Asking ourselves, like, why haven't I moved? Why am I still doing this? Why can't I figure it out? Why do I keep ending up back in the same place every single time, every 6 months? What's wrong with me? And when those are the questions that you keep circling around and you give your energy to them, there's only one place to look, right? And that's at yourself. Because then you believe that you are the problem to solve, the obstacle to overcome, the project to improve, the thing standing in the way of the life that you say you want. And honestly, I think many high performing women have spent way too much time living inside that relationship with themselves, always trying to become better, more efficient, more disciplined, more decisive, more productive, more certain, more whatever they believe they need to be in order to finally get it right. But what if this isn't a character issue? What if this isn't evidence that you're incapable of change or incapable of making difficult decisions or incapable of trusting yourself? What if this space between knowing and moving was never meant to be used as evidence against you and instead information? Because when it comes to being a high achiever, I don't know if it's something that we normally stop long enough to consider that possibility. Instead, I feel like we rush to conclusions like I should know better. I should have done something by now. I should already have this figured out. I shouldn't still be struggling with this. And eventually, when we shoulded all over ourselves, when we should all over ourselves, the shoulds become so familiar that they begin sounding like our truth. Until one day you get so sick and tired that you realize, at least for myself, it just came to that point. I got so sick and tired that I realized that I needed to pause. I needed to stop and look and ask myself, what is it that I'm missing? What if it's not that I'm failing? What if it's not resistance? What if it's not weakness? What if it's not proof that I don't know myself as well as I thought? Because what if there's more happening here in this space that you find yourself in that you've been willing to consider? Because I think there's a profound difference between saying, I haven't moved and saying, I don't understand yet why movement has felt so difficult for me. Because one becomes a verdict, right? I haven't moved. So you're placing blame. And right there, all of those negatives come in. But the other one becomes an opening. You get to be curious around it. I don't understand yet why the movement has felt so difficult for me. That's where you can go deeper. One closes the conversation, right? I haven't moved. The other allows it to continue because you're saying, I don't understand yet. And I think that's the moment that can facilitate change. Not because you suddenly know what to do, because maybe you don't. And maybe not because everything becomes clear, but because you've taken a pause to stop standing in opposition to yourself, to stop assuming that your humanity is proof of your inadequacy, to stop interpreting uncertainty as incompetence, and to stop turning your experiences into a performance review of your worth. And instead, when you take those moments to pause, you find yourself becoming interested in the woman who's been carrying the discomfort of not knowing or knowing, but not having clarity of what to do with that knowing, right? Or to become interested in the expectations that you've been living under, that you've placed on yourself or that have been externally placed on you, to become interested in the assumptions that you've made about how change is supposed to happen, right? Maybe you think you believe it's just too hard, and then that's a conversation to go deeper into the why behind. Even to become interested in why you've been so quick to extend understanding to everyone else while withholding it from yourself. Maybe the most important thing isn't answering the question of why haven't I moved? Maybe it's just recognizing that the answer wasn't supposed to be something's wrong with me. And perhaps even before anything changes externally, even before decisions are made or even next steps to emerge, that there's simply this moment where you stop treating yourself like the enemy, where you stop gathering evidence of your own inadequacy, where you allow for the possibility that there may be wisdom in your experiences that criticism has prevented you from seeing. And I don't think that's giving up responsibility. I think it's really finally you telling the truth to yourself about what this has felt like, because maybe the woman that you've been trying so hard to fix has been trying to understand herself all along. Okay. That's what I'm saying. It's like sometimes we get so caught up thinking that, okay, clarity, action, and not realizing, and I talked about this in a previous episode about the clarity, frustration loop. When we don't allow ourselves to take the pause and to understand the, get more into a deeper understanding of the maybe I haven't moved, there's more to me to see, to understand before I take action and allow myself then to become more clear, which will then reveal those moments that will reveal to you the action steps to take. So before we close today, I want to leave you with this, with something to sit with. Where in your life have you known something for a while? Like you've been thinking about it. You've been pondering about it. You've been thinking about it for a long time now. It keeps coming back. It might go away. It keeps coming back, showing up maybe every 6 months, maybe at the end of every year. You start looking back over your year and it comes back again. And you've expected yourself to act it on whatever that is. You've expected yourself to have acted on it by now. Maybe it's a conversation that you know needs to happen, like you've been putting the conversation off. Maybe it's a commitment that you keep questioning, something that you committed to, but it just doesn't align with you anymore. Maybe it's the way that you've been structuring your days or the pace that you've been going, like you've been living at. Maybe it's something that you want that keeps getting pushed behind everything else, behind everyone else's needs. And maybe what has felt so hard for you alongside the fact that you haven't moved yet and that you haven't made any changes is that maybe what's felt the hardest is what you've started making it mean. That you're not serious enough, that you're not ready enough, that you should know better by now, that if it mattered enough, that you would have done something already. And that if you really wanted something to be different, that your life would already look different. And I want you to notice that. I don't want you to judge yourself. I don't want you to start, going down that rabbit hole of all of the shoulds and the what ifs and the I can't believe I'm not there yet. I I just want you to notice what comes up for you. Like where have you turned your lack of movement into evidence against yourself? Where have you been standing in the gap between knowing and doing and calling that gap a failure? Because that can happen too, right? And where have you been measuring your worth by how quickly you can act on what you see? Because I think that's where so many women lose tenderness for themselves, lose grace with themselves, because they've expected awareness to create immediate movement. And when it didn't, they started questioning who they were, why they haven't moved yet, and why they can't seem to do the very thing that they keep telling themselves that they want to do. So again, maybe the question isn't, why haven't I made any changes? Why am I still in limbo? Maybe it's more like, what have I been making my indecision to move mean about me because I haven't moved yet? And to go further, what part of you have you been judging when what you really needed was to understand her, the woman who's still thinking? Because there's a difference between changing your circumstances and understanding the woman who's been trying to live inside them. And so maybe before anything changes externally, maybe it's first deciding to no longer treat yourself like the problem and to stop assuming that just because you haven't moved yet, that something about you must be wrong. So that's what I want you to sit with. I want you to really think about where you've known something for a while and the expectation of yourself to be further along by now. And then what would shift if your lack of movement wasn't evidence that something's wrong with you, but information about something inside your experience that desires to be understood. And so conversations like this really make me think that one of the hardest parts about experiences like this, where we're in that those moments that keep coming back, we keep circling back to them, they can become incredibly isolating because your life right now, for all intents and purposes, might look like you're doing the things you say you do. You're still showing up, you're functioning, you're meeting your responsibilities, still being the woman that everyone knows you to be. But internally, you could be having a very different conversation where you say things like, I just don't understand why this is so hard for me. I don't understand why I'm still here in this place of uncertainty or knowing, but it's like I just can't move. I don't understand why I haven't been able to move forward. And those aren't always the kinds of conversations that we feel comfortable saying out loud to anyone, right? Because when you're the woman that people rely on, that others look to you as the capable, dependable one, there could be a tremendous amount of pressure to have it all figured out, right? To always have the answers, to always know what you're doing, to always be able to explain yourself. But what if you can't? Like, what if you're in this season of your life where you're still trying to understand your own experiences? Like, you're trying to figure out the season that you're in. What if you don't have a beautifully packaged explanation yet? And what if all you know is, I've been carrying something for a while now. I don't know why I haven't been able to move through it yet. I just don't know what to do yet. And honestly, I just think that conversations like that are so important to have. And one of the reasons, and I also believe that conversations like this are so important to have with trusted circle of friends, with people in your life that you can really turn to, that you can, that's why I believe community is so important. I truly believe that community is a self-care tool. Yes, I'm using the word self-care, but I truly believe that because when you have people in your life who care about you and can support you and you can go to with these things that you're thinking, that you find yourself in this transition of life that you're not sure about, that when you have people in your life that you can go to, that can have your back, that can support you, that's so important. And it's really one of the reasons why I have been passionate about building the faceless and nameless gatherings that I have been mentioning here now for the past several weeks. It's a virtual space where we'll show up on Zoom, where there'll be no faces, no names, no titles, no professional identities to maintain, no pressure to sound wise or to have all the answers. Just a small gathering of women coming into the space to support each other, being honest about what it's like to navigate the seasons of life that don't always make sense. A place where you can show up as yourself and say, I thought maybe I'd be further along by now, or I just don't understand why I keep judging myself for this, or I don't even know what I need. I just know that I can't keep pretending that this isn't affecting me. And doing this without someone rushing to fix you, without needing to defend yourself, without feeling like you have to explain it in a way that makes sense to everyone else, especially when you're not even sure what it means yet. And so that's why I'm building this space for me and for you. And if today's conversation resonated with you, and if you've been carrying questions about your life, about yourself, and you're tired of carrying it alone, if a space like that is something that you feel you've been looking for, that you've been longing for, that you would really love to be a part of, you'll find my email in the show notes. And I just want you to send me an email, just a quick message saying yes to the gatherings. That's it. No explanation needed. Just the word yes. And then once I'm ready to reveal the date and the time, I'll reach out to you personally and we'll come together in this space to support each other. Because I have a feeling there are so many women right now who are asking themselves, what's wrong with me? When the better question could simply be, can someone sit with me while I figure out what this experience has been trying to teach me? Because I think that is a different question that can open up possibilities, whereas the other one is basically taking you down the road of, listing all the negatives, all the things that you would never say to anyone else, but you would have no problem saying them to yourself. Maybe secretly in your mind. I call that the secret bubble, but maybe it's in your mind, or you might say it out loud to yourself when no one's around. But again, changing the question from what's wrong with me to actually saying, hey, I need support. And I would love if someone could just sit here with me and help me to understand, not from the teaching perspective where you're telling me what to do, but helping me to actually uncover what it is that I'm thinking and helping me determine how best to move forward. So if that resonates with you, send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. I think one of the reasons this conversation feels so personal for me is because I've spent a lot of my life measuring myself by what I produce, what I can do for other people, by how quickly I can adapt, how efficiently I solve problems, how decisively I move, and how well I handle what life places in front of me. And when I don't move as quickly as I think I should, when I remain in uncertainty longer than I want to or expect to, or when I revisit the same decisions more times than I'd like to admit, I don't simply question the situation. I question myself. I used to. I've gotten better at it. I'm still human. I have those moments where that happens. But for the most part, I've learned that yeah, I used to just question myself, like instead of the situation, like looking at there's this thing that's in front of me that I am trying to solve. And listen, I have incredible women in my life that I have turned to and shared my stories with them, and they've shared theirs with me. And maybe that's why it's so personal to me, and why and what I've really been talking about throughout this entire conversation today is the fact that I believe that there's so many extraordinary women carrying around private conclusions about who they are based solely on how long something's taking them, where they start thinking, I've had enough time. I should know by now. I should have figured this out. I thought I'd be further along. I don't understand why this still feels so hard. And when those thoughts stop sounding like frustration, they start to sound like identity. This is just who I am. Maybe I'm not someone who follows through. Maybe I'll always overthink. Maybe I'll always hesitate. Maybe I'll always find myself back here. Alwaysing yourself, right? Instead, like just like the word should, you're alwaysing yourself. And I know that's not a word, but I'm making it a word. And I think that's why I believe it's important that we take that pause to really sit in those moments, those seasons of our life, and ask ourselves, those seasons of our life where we're thinking and we're right back at it again, trying to figure out why we keep ending up in the same spot again. And we begin and just ask ourselves, like, whether those conclusions that we're saying about ourselves are actually true, or whether they're just simply stories that we've built while trying to make sense of an experience that we never expected to have. Because I don't think extraordinary lives are built by women who never hesitate, or women who always know exactly what to do, or who move through every season of their lives with certainty and confidence. I think extraordinary lives are built by women who are willing to take the pause and get clear on what's going on in their lives, to go deeper, asking themselves deeper level questions, to get those deeper level answers, to get those deeper level transformations. The women who resist the urge to turn every unanswered question into a character flaw, who stop using timelines as their proof of their worth, and who recognize that being human and being capable can exist at the very same time. And you can still have those moments of pause, those seasons of life where you just don't know yet. You just don't know what you don't know, and you need to take that time to think it through. And I think that's important, because maybe the most courageous thing isn't moving faster. Maybe it's refusing to abandon yourself while you're still finding your way through something you don't yet understand. And instead of asking, why haven't I moved? Maybe you just ask, what if my lack of movement has never been evidence that something's wrong with me, but something for me to pause and reflect on, to get to those deeper level questions that provide those deeper level answers, that provide the deeper level transformations. And I believe that as a woman who's still becoming, still understanding, still learning, still discovering your way through an experience, that it isn't always as immediate as you think it's going to be, and that that's okay to not always have an immediate response. And if that's where you find yourself today, I hope you'll remember this. You are more than your timelines. You're more than your hesitations. You're more than the conclusions that you've drawn about yourself in moments of frustration. I want you to remember that you're a woman who's having a human experience, and maybe that's your reminder that just because this season of life has taken longer than you expected it to, it doesn't mean that you failed. Thanks for taking time out of your day to spend it with me. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Electricast.